too nostalgic, I'll admit it.
We graduated 4 months ago. What can you possibly be nostalgic for?
I'm nostalgic for conversations I had yesterday. I begun reminiscing events before they even occur. I'm reminiscing this right now. I can't go to the bar because I've already looked back in it in my memory, and I didn't have a good time.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. It's time to do another comic book retrospective. We've never talked about the X-Men here, and I imagine a lot of people would expect us to talk about the Uncanny X-Men first, but no, we are going back to the original team. X-Men 49 through 52, Arnold Drake writing with Don Heck, Werner Roth, and Jim Steranko on art. Fabulous story debuting in August 1968 through November 1968, where we have the X-Men have been disbanded by the FBI and kind of have to get kind of back together here, Breed. This would have even preceded your time. My goodness. Yeah. What did you think about this story? These are good times for the X-Men. I think everyone kind of thinks the X-Men begin really with, giant size X-Men #1.
Yeah, there was X-Men before that. Years of them, actually. And we're going to talk about one of those stories today, and I am extremely excited to talk about this, and I will see myself out.
Excellent.
Well, Breed, so this team didn't quite catch on like the second team. What is it about, having Cyclops, Jean Grey, Marvel Girl, Beast, Angel, and Iceman? Is there something missing from that team mix, or it just wasn't the right time for that team?
No, I think it had more to do with the popularity of other characters that they created. The Fantastic Four and the Avengers immediately leaped to mind as far as the three teams Marvel had in the 60s. And this, for the first several years, they all had matching uniforms. They were basically at the beck and call of Charles Xavier, and it's not that they weren't good. I mean, this and Daredevil were definitely the soapiest of the Marvel comics, and they said it's not that they weren't popular; it's just they were a distant third to the other two. And I think in those days there was still the distribution deal where they could only publish X amount of so many books. And even though that had come to an end by the time this got canceled the first time, I'm sure they were probably looking at it as there might be a better use of our time and resources. So this one just kind of got culled from the ranks for a while. And then, the relaunch with Giant Size, that was just right place, right time with characters that really resonated. So it's more of that was more popular, but this. There's nothing wrong with these guys. It's just it just never did get as big as the other team books.
Yeah, I would just add on top of that too that if you're a big fan of some of the other team books, especially something like Fantastic Four, at this stage of X-Men, it feels a little redundant because you have like the team leader, you have the girl he's into who's doing the support role, you have the younger, harder to control kid, Bobby, instead of Johnny. In this, Beast is almost like a bizarro thing where instead of being like a gruff working class guy, he comes off as like a very astute elitist type. So I think that also kind of plays a little bit into it. And once they did, Giant Size and moved X-Men on from there, they did a better job, I think, of establishing differences and using different character archetypes and things like that.
So yeah, this is it's an interesting team. I think it probably helps in the second team when you get Wolverine in there. Yeah, he's the powerhouse, that replaces Beast, where he's not a genius. He kind of plays a more gruff kind of character within the team. You get like a kind of a more grounded character in Nightcrawler that kind of brings a little heart into the team, a little different perspective, and it really adds to the team dynamics. But this is a very fun comic book. We do see the debut of Erik the Red here, Joe, which actually filled in a few blanks and questions I had when I was reading my Uncanny X-Men run. I was like, why are they talking about this Erik the Red guy like that? Now I know why, because he wasn't originally really a bad guy. Well, kind of was, but not really.
Yeah. No, you have that element going on. You have this answers a few questions, I think, for people. You have the origins of Laura Dane, who later becomes Polaris, which they don't really go into Polaris at all that here, but we get the character introduction. And for anyone who maybe got bored or something, reading X-Men from here, be like, they killed Professor X again. Well, they've been killing Professor X. And, so all the people who waited to sigh about that until, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, because you can't let Professor X get through like a decade without killing him. The people who have been reading it since then, they've been sighing since, the 60s about it.
His first name really should have been Kenny.
Absolutely. The Kenny of Marvel Comics. So this is obviously coming out August 1968 through November 1968. What's going around in the comic book industry, Joe? Obviously, it's a much different industry. Marvel has really started to establish what the 616 is going to be and what's becoming, and kind of changing the comic book industry as DC Comics is doing kind of more of the same that they had been doing for the last decade.
Yeah, no. The month this came out, like the first issue of it, X-Men 49, you had Avengers 57, Behold the Vision, the introduction of Vision. You got, John Romita Sr. in full swing on Amazing Spider-Man. You got, I'm trying to think, there were some other interesting things over at Marvel. Oh, you had the Hulk special #1 that Steranko did the cover, like probably the most iconic Hulk cover ever. Also came out around here. I think Steranko just wrapped up what he was doing over on S.H.I.E.L.D. Still, Nick Fury Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. still doing the covers, but had wrapped up doing the interior pages there. So you have a lot going on there. Oh, and to plug a previous retrospective we did, the end of the arc of Thor happened 157 with Mangog. You had that issue come out the same time this launched. And, over at DC, you get, some Jim Shooter, Legion of Superheroes. This month was that this started was the first appearance of the Tornado Twins, very distant relatives of Barry Allen 1,000 years from now. So that's going on. I'm trying to think, like, there's so much going. Oh, the Doom Patrol, the last issue happens at this time, the 121 of the ending the Silver Age run, which adds a little something to what we're talking about today, because that was like Arnold Drake's baby, and he had moved over and done X-Men, which a lot of people have argued back and forth that X-Men was a knockoff of Doom Patrol. So it's interesting that the creator of Doom Patrol, who had to see his book end this same month that like this arc starts, is writing X-Men, the book that was claimed was the knockoff of. And you get some other interesting stuff, like Jack Kirby's doing the Demon at this point at DC. You have I think Ditko's doing Creeper, and then you got Joe Simon creating Brother Power the Geek. So just interesting stuff going on.
What do you say, Breen? Are the X-Men a knockoff of Doom Patrol?
I'm not touching that argument.
You gotta have a side. You got opinions.
I wasn't there, contrary to popular belief. Whether it was or whether it wasn't, doesn't matter. I mean, we got years of great stories from both teams, and
they certainly diverged on different paths.
Yeah, one of them went on to be a little bit more popular than the other, but albeit not in its original form.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely two different paths. So let's get into these X-Men comics. We're starting out with X-Men 49, Who Dares Defy the Demi-Men, Arnold Drake writing. And we have Don Heck, Warner Roth on art here. And obviously, like I mentioned earlier, we got the X-Men have been disbanded. They're kind of out there, all doing their own thing. And we have Angel returning to the X-Mansion, and he discovers Cerebro is still running. and it's reporting an abnormally large number of mutants. So he attempts to make a link with Jean Grey. Eventually, they have a psi-link connected, and then they add in Scott and Bobby and Hank to talk about this. Unfortunately, this is bad timing for Bobby and Hank as they are skydiving. It almost ends up killing Hank, and Bobby ends up using his powers to kind of save him as he's about to fall to his death. And then we see the big reveal here, Breen, is that the mutant army there's a mutant army gathering in San Francisco led by a character named Maresmo under the orders of Magneto. And all these mutants are being called there, and one of them being called is Lorna Dane, who has apparently traveled like 1,200 miles as she's been hypnotized. And then she is saved by Bobby, kind of opening this up, kind of setting the stage for a pretty fun story here, Breen.
Yeah, a whole bunch of people end up in San Francisco, and I said, Bobby, meets Lorna and is instantly taken with her.
Smitten.
Yes, smitten. And brings her back to what he calls his pad, not to date this story or anything. But, of course, now, he gets back and the team's like, what are you doing? You're bringing somebody here, so you're gonna blow the gig. And I said they find out that there's a whole bunch of people. Yeah, I can't remember I forgot what they called them. I keep wanting to say Marauders, but I know that's not it. As you said, led by Mesmero, and they go off to fight them.
Yep. So as he mentioned, Joe, Hank is not happy that Lorna has been brought back to their cohabitational bachelor pad. He said it's not cool. It's against the rules. And we see Cyclops, Iceman, and Jean Grey end up leaving Hank and Lorna behind to investigate what the hell is going on, as Beast is working on a new portable version of Cerebro, because he's a genius. And they do eventually find the army of Mesmero. Why am I messing this name up? Notice the Debbie army at a mansion, and they are attacked while the army pledges loyalty to Magneto, a character that I don't think we've seen in all that recently. And during the fight, during the fracas, we have Angel injured as they retreat back to Hank. Joe.
Yeah, and something I also want to talk about briefly here is Don Heck, who is easily one of the more glossed over artists around now. And in general, I mean, he's been involved in so much. People may know him best as the guy who took over after Jack Kirby on Avengers, but he'd been around and drew, at some point, most of the Marvel characters in comics, whether it's a fill-in or if he got a little run. And then he went over to DC and also got to draw a ton of the characters there. Probably most well-known, maybe his runs on The Flash and Wonder Woman. So, he's definitely an artist who gets overlooked too much that people should, check out if you're not as familiar with. And, just some of the page compositions here, again, like a lot of the previous, retrospectives we've done are just phenomenal. I mean, the layouts here, when they're skydiving, was at page 4, I think, where, the panels are all coming down like this to kind of stress, the falling and, and then it's also good. Page 6, and this is more of a colorist decision with, the radio signals going out to get the latent mutants and using just the whites and the yellows and trying to make it look like sonar. But no, it's really great just diving into the story. There's continuity, but they do it in a way where you can kind of pick up this issue and figure out what's happening pretty quickly. But yeah, it's interesting seeing Bobby interact with Lorna, because we all know that, Bobby Drake at this point is a closeted homosexual.
Yes.
So clearly he's going above and beyond to prove that.
Putting up a front.
Right. Oh, yeah. And it only gets more intense every issue.
Absolutely. Well. He really wants people to think he's a horn dog.
Absolutely, you know, and that's it's going deep cover. But you know, and then there's well, also just go back to the skydiving bit real quick. It's like Arnold Drake was trying to figure out, like, you know, I gotta do like this exposition, but you know what? Instead of them just like having to pick up a phone and having like a dull page of like, what? Tragedy in San Francisco, I'll be right there. He's like, oh, what would be interesting? Oh, let's have him skydiving.
What if it almost killed him? Let's not make it more exciting.
Yeah, you know, it felt like there was an interest in entertaining and engaging the audience, and that there was this way of thinking of, okay, well, we got to get through some exposition. We got to let them know certain things, but damn it, let's try to have fun. Like, it's nice to read a comic where it feels like they're conscious of that and trying to engage.
Yeah, today it would be a text. Right?
Well, today that would all be the first issue. Would be the let's all get
yes,
to
the interaction.
We got to reach out to everyone. Everyone would be doing something else. They'd each get like 4 or 5 pages of what they were doing, and would eventually all get to San Francisco. So the first like 6, 7 pages of this issue would have been one issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we do see, Eric, that the at Hank's new Cerebro, his mobile Cerebro, is actually working, and he immediately spots a nearby mutant. As we see Lorna come through the door, kind of enter the room, and she's got green hair. Apparently, she's been covering that up as a means of disguise. And Hank actually claims that he's Bobby's friend that's going to a costume party, as he's lying about the fact that he's a mutant, because we have everybody lying to each other here. And then the rest of the team arrive, and they decide they're going to investigate Magneto's whereabouts because his name's come up. And this time, Bobby and Lorna decide that they're going to stay behind, and they are almost immediately ambushed by Mesmero and his Debbie-Man mutants army. Bobby is hypnotized, and all of a sudden, the army kind of like bows down and starts worshiping Lorna. What is going on here, Eric? My goodness.
First, there's this panel that didn't make it into the book where, you know, Bobby is, you know, lavishing attention on Lorna, and Jean comes over to him and says, Bobby, and he goes, I'm busy. Get back to me in about 50 years. Yeah, that's the swerve at the end of the first issue. You know, you don't know what's coming, and then when they bow down to her, because she has no idea, and of course she wants Bobby or Iceman, because she doesn't know he's Bobby yet, but he's been hypnotized and can't do anything. So yeah, at the end of issue 49, they screwed. Well, even Bobby is.
Yeah. No, but it's all very interesting and action packed all the way to the end. I love on like page 13 when you know, they're flying in that jet, and just like the house and the clouds around it, like it's just such a gorgeous image. And yeah, and then you get through all this, and there's fighting, and I love that at this point in X-Men, they're still kind of figuring out what's a mutant, what's not a mutant. Like, they keep going more and more into that as the years go by and retcon things. But I do love that, you know, like we were talking about before, she has the green hair, and, you know, Beast is like, well, clearly she must be a mutant if she has green hair. You know?
So that would be the logical leap in 1968. I mean, if it's like this 2 years ago, it's like
nowadays, not so much. This gets us into X-Men 50, and we get Jim Steranko on for 2 issues of this story arc, and it's absolutely brilliant. Still a man ahead of his time, and we get Hail Queen of Mutants, and we see initially, Joe, that Mesmero is taking Bobby and Lorna to his secret city of mutants. And Iceman is in prison while scientists are trying to wake up Polaris, or they don't know if she's Polaris yet. It's Lorna's mutant abilities. And the rest of the X-Men team are storming Mesmero's mansion, and they're gassed by the Debbie-Men and taken to Mutant City. And then we see that Mesmero's machines have awakened Lorna's mutant abilities. She has control over magnetism. And then we hear Mesmero refer to her as Magneto's daughter and calls her M2. My goodness.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the single most important things, and this is not hyperbole at all, is this is the issue that Steranko redesigned the X-Men logo to the classic, most well-known, most used logo, most recognized logo that the X-Men ever had or ever will have. So I think that's important to keep in mind. And if we didn't mention that, we would get reamed for that in the comments. So I just wanted to make sure.
I wouldn't get reamed. Everybody knows I don't know what I'm doing here. You and Breed would get reamed.
Then on those lines, then can we at least talk about the 2-page splash? Yeah, the pages 2 and 3, where one of the things about Steranko is everything he did had a James Bond set kind of feel to it.
Yes.
So he even managed to make, I said, the Mesmero's mansion. You see the futuristic looking car and the hangar that comes up out of the ground, and just all the things that no one did. Put the title of a story like we're a city of mutants. Nobody could do it before or since like Steranko, and just I said his splashes were just the best we've ever seen.
Yeah, and and this isn't a knock on Steranko, but Lorna Dane in the like that green outfit, and like he had made Madam, or shortly after this we get Madam Hydra, that design in Cap, and it's like, I think Jim's might be telling us a little bit about how he likes his women. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But
he's a man of his times.
Yeah,
because she had green hair too, did she not?
Yeah,
originally,
I think. Yeah, I think so. Well, it ended up being like black at some point, but yeah, like you had that, and then the bottom of page 4, that like, I guess like third of a page splash with Lorna on the device and all the Kirby crackle and stuff like that. Again, just gorgeous, masterful.
It literally says
art.
crackle.
Yeah. and then the next page on page 5, again, just like the layout and understanding comics, doing a close-up of each of the 4 X-Men that are here with different, like slightly different facial expressions each time. The way he draws Cyclops and just the eyes through the visor that you can kind of see in the red. And then that mostly splash page image, and just his mastery of direction and that like forced perspective and getting you. So look at this image of them running into, the hideout on that like angle. It's really impressive and very difficult to do. And it's difficult to do because a lot of artists don't do it.
they don't even give it a try. So at this point, Breed, the rest of the X-Men obviously arrive, and they refuse to bow to Lorna. And then Iceman himself actually freezes his shackles and sets himself apart. Mesmero orders Lorna to use her powers against the team, and she does let out a very large magnetic blast, but it's not against the X-Men. She actually attacks Mesmero and his demi-men, and we see Angel actually saves her as she kind of faints after using this amount of power. And then the X-Men move to seize the initiative, Green. They're going to win the day. And then they are stopped by a barrier. Like, what the hell's going on? And out of the shadows emerges Magneto.
And maybe the least impressive reintroduction to a character, with apologies to Jim Steranko, where he looks like he's let's just say that last panel where he announces his return. I guess, but now part of what I'm going to say is because at the time they'd been cut down to 15 pages because they were doing the origin stories in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I would imagine there would have been another full page splash of him returning. But yeah, so because they thought he was dead. Imagine that in comics, they thought the bad guy was dead,
right?
And yeah, I know. And here he is. And so as if Mesmero wasn't bad enough.
It was true. It was Magneto the whole time.
Another
that
M.
brings us into X-Men 51, also Jim Steranko, and I believe this one's called The Devil Had a Daughter. And Magneto confirms, Joe, that Lorna is his daughter and offers her and the rest of the X-Men a place in his army. The X-Men politely decline and strike out at Magneto. Iceman actually grabs Lorna and tries to flee, but it's a numbers game here. Magneto and the Demi-Men end up overwhelming the X-Men, but then they kind of fight back, and they've got the drop on Magneto. And then we see Lorna actually attack the X-Men, save what she believes is her father, and the X-Men flee once again as Magneto orders his army to kill them. We got a heel turn, Joe.
We do. It might not even be the first one or the last one here. There's quite a bit of this, but soap opera comics, people. But yeah, you get this. You get again the way that Steranko does these like opening splash images, just like in the 2-page splash we got here. This 1-page splash, is again just gorgeous with the shadow of Magneto over, the Devil Had a Daughter. It's just and what might be one of the single best credits pages with Jim Steranko credited as, "Do we have to tell you?"
Yeah, I like that.
But yeah, it's just again that mastery of the layouts and knowing when to really go all out, knowing when to put things in silhouette. The action scenes, they get crazy. There's you see the Jim Kirby influence, especially on something like page 6, because Jack loved doing those like 2x2, the big panels like that, and yeah, just the impressive action that keeps up throughout. Page 7 there with the top right corner with Cyclops. He's got to get out of that metal helmet that Magneto got him in. And,
well, lucky for him, it worked.
Yeah, no, that could have just been it. That could have been how they took Cyclops off the map. But hey, so yeah, it's very intense, and again that mastery of panel breaks and showing the progression of time. So we get on that same page, page 7, the 4 panels at the top to really stress that Cyclops is struggling to get the mask off. It's subtle but important stuff here.
Absolutely. This brings him back to the apartment, back to the old bachelor pad, Eric Breed, and Cyclops, after the shenanigans of Bobby, actually orders him to stand down due to his feelings for Lorna. Iceman is obviously furious. He storms out, and Scott's like, "Don't worry, he'll calm down eventually. He'll be all right." And then we get a little break as far as time. A few days later, and Mutant City is under siege from a new evil mutant named Erik the Red, the first appearance of the character. And Erik is intimidated the guards, and he demands them to find Magneto because he is there to join his army. We have a new villain entering the fold, Eric Bree.
Okay, well, we're a little ahead of ourselves. He hasn't announced that yet. That's in 52. But what I want to mention real quick is one of the things about this story, because we've kind of glossed over the story, in favor of, gushing about Jim Steranko, and well deserved. Yeah. But in the scene where they're fighting, one thing, even though Bobby and Scott are arguing at this point in the book, prior to that in the battle, Bobby wanted to fight, and it was his wanting to fight that made Cyclops say, "Okay, you heard the junior member of the team says go, so we're going," and he attacks Magneto. So it wasn't, one of the things about this X-Men team is it wasn't that Scott's word was absolute law. He did listen to the other members of the team until it was time to maybe not to, and when he saw where Bobby was losing his objectivity, But that was one of the parts of the story that I liked, was that he would be willing to listen to somebody, because there's the battle kind of interesting. They basically temporarily incapacitate Magneto and whatnot, but so we're now we're set up for the fourth part of this story. And I said, Bobby has, as you said, Bobby stormed off, and they go, well, it's just as well, because but I have a plan. Listen up, troops. And then we get the last page, and I get, I don't know if you were supposed to figure that out immediately, because if you were paying attention, maybe you did. I didn't. First time I read it, not when it came out, kids. I was 6.
And we really have to stress here, because this is really impressive. Bobby is so deep in the closet and so determined to hide this from the world that he's willing to risk his very life and the life of his friends and everyone who's ever done anything good for him in this world for a woman.
He's a hero first, Joe. By the way, also one real quick, something about Steranko is he used to like to try to get away with as much as he could before the comics code would slap him down. There's that famous scene in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where Nick and the Contessa are going at it. I'm sure Joe's very familiar with that, with the ringing phone and the gun in the holster.
Yes.
You notice Jim Steranko's Jean Grey, the skirt's a little shorter, the top's a little lower cut, a little tighter, and she's wearing heels. And so is Lorna. But when you get to the next issue with Warner Roth, they're gone. So I said, because I think that was Steranko said, what can I get away with? Yes. Because it was in 1968. Remember, I mean, I said, they were very prudish.
Sleeping in the same bed was considered a little taboo at the time, Eric.
Yeah, it just kind of made you wonder how those kids got made sometimes. We'll tell you when you're a little older, son.
This gets us into X-Men 52 and the return of Don Heck and Werner Roth as the artist of the book, as Eric already mentioned. Joe, we've got Mesmero identifies Erik the Red as a threat and tries to destroy him. This does not go over well. Erik defeats the Demi-Man, and he's shooting force beams from his hands. And we see Erik the Red searching the complex, finding Lorna, and tells her that he's there to join her father's army. And then we see Magneto actually accepts Erik the Red, and Lorna orders him to go and free Mesmero and the others from the rubble. And then we also get Marvel Girl, Beast, and Angel initiating Operation Twilight as they are returning to the mutant city.
Yeah, and I know both companies have done this before, but like the splash page image we start with on page 1 with the Twilight of the Mutants with Cyclops, Marvel Girl, Angel, Iceman, Beast off to the side there. It always makes me feel more like this is like a DC thing, because I feel like DC did it more consistently and more often, that like style of, like it's Justice League comic or it's a team book and here's all the characters on the side. They, particularly with Legion of Superheroes, because there were just too many characters, so they would always have to put them on the side like that to like help you. And sometimes it would like go on the side and then like wrap around and go through the whole thing. But yeah, that kind of moment, and knowing that Arnold Drake is really more of a DC guy makes me wonder, like, was that like his like suggestion?
Or how do you follow 2 Steranko splashes if you're not Steranko?
Yeah,
let's just put some floating heads up. They bought it then, they'll buy it now.
Yeah.
And we see that Erik the Red does free Mesmero, but he tells Lorna and Magneto that he doesn't trust him and asks if he can actually monitor him, which they say he can. But Magneto, he lets everybody know that he doesn't trust either man. He thinks that they're both treacherous, as the X-Men infiltrate the complex and discover Erik the Red. And we get the big reveal, Breen, that most people probably already know. It's actually Cyclops. He's infiltrated it as a fake evil mutant, is actually the leader of the team the whole time. And they begin a plan to sabotage the city. And then they hear some footsteps approaching. And wouldn't you know it, Bobby has screwed up. He's decided to follow them, hoping to help Lorna. And then this commotion ends up actually alerting Mesmero, who attacks with the Debbie Men. And we see a Jean Grey Mesmero mind measuring contest, Breen. Whose is bigger?
Yeah, we just got to point out that the plan that they had was to shoot 1,000 volts through all of Mesmero's Demi-Men. And when Bobby arrives, he gets it, but they just stop it in time to where I guess only 682.5 volts go through him. So he's only stunned.
I saw that in what is it, the Lost in Space season 2, like not in the finale, but maybe the one before that. They used the exact same plot point. We don't have enough power. We can only hold them in place. We can't destroy the robots. Now I know where they got it.
And as far as who's got the bigger mind, tough to tell because the battle is joined, and they they get interrupted right in the middle of their measuring contest, and I guess that's when Bobby reaches Lorna and tells her the truth.
That's true, Joe. We get Magneto orders Lorna to attack the X-Men, and she does go in as she's told, and that's when we see a revived Iceman lets her know that Magneto is absolutely a liar. He investigated her life, and he found out that her parents died a few days after she was born in a plane crash, and then Lorna just decides to join the X-Men, turning the table on Mesmero, Magneto, and the Demi-Men, and then she confronts Magneto himself with the truth. Magneto, being a coward, flees, but he does. I don't know why he does this. He tells the X-Men that Mutant City will be destroyed in 60 seconds. So they are able to flee the city. Obviously, Magneto gets away, barely surviving, Joe, but they do have a new member of the team in tow.
Yeah, and I'm just looking through because there's a few bits here in the art where you're wishing more than usual that Steranko was doing this. In particular, I'm looking at page 4, like that bottom splash of Lorna and Erik the Red, and just the way it's designed, you're like, I really wish something like that was Steranko, because I think he really would have killed that. But then you see Don Heck really leaning into sort of what really makes this art stand out. And, that's a little later. You get pages like page 11, where it's just a lot of quick kinetic action. And that's where it's like, okay, that's really where I think Don Heck and such shine in this particular issue.
Absolutely. It's crazy. Like you mentioned, there are backup stories in each one of these issues. And they're able to tell a full, comprehensive, well-executed story in 4 issues, but they're not even full issues. They're like 2/3 of issues. So it just it was a different time in comics, Joe. You could really cram some stuff in there and get some story out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I love a tight story that gets the point. That's always been important to me, and you can really tell it's a different time because this is back when they used to have Frisco text.
So here's the end.
I know you're regretting being born as late as you were, that you never got to go to a Frisco Tech.
Oh, absolutely. And getting all that muscular therapy there.
So by the end here, Breen, we've got the X-Men back together again. They're no longer disbanded. I imagine the FBI are going to be very happy about that. We've got the return of Magneto, the introduction of alter ego Erik the Red as a disguise or a guise for Cyclops, although he ends up coming back as a real villain. It turns out that's a real character later on in the series. And we also have the introduction of Lorna Dane, who we still see in the comic books to this day. Very important character, who is eventually retconned to really being the daughter of Magneto eventually.
And see, I think Magneto knew that even then. That's why when fleeing the city and inexplicably having time to record a message before he left, instead of because
killing them all.
Listen, a taped message instead of a live one, because apparently maybe one of his powers is to stop time. He knew that he had to give him 60 seconds to get out because he really didn't want to kill his daughter.
Yeah.
Or it just
He's a Bond villain, right?
Yeah.
He's got a good way good way to play it.
Now, obviously, we've taken a tongue-in-cheek approach to this story, but barbs aside, this is an awful lot packed into 60 pages.
Yes, it is.
I mean, there's a lot of character interaction between the team members. As cartoonish as Mesmero may look, there was actually some plot behind what he wanted to do, and that he was, as powerful as he fancied himself, he knew his place, and he knew that Magneto was the boss, and that would be addressed later. But I thought this was a pretty good story arc, because I said there's no wasted panels, because one of the things about these old Marvel comics is a lot of times, I don't know if it was the Marvel method that led to this, but there would be times when there would be 2 panels left on the last page and they're still in the battle. And they'd have to wrap it up in one panel, and then you've got one, exit panel. This one at least, had a couple, but I said there's, compare the way this story was told to the way they're told now, and it would be jarring for people that had just gotten into comics in the last couple of years to see how much you could actually pack into a story in those days.
Absolutely.
And this is a different time in X-Men, Joe Corallo. It's not the phenomenon that it is today. And not too long after this, basically they stopped making new X-Men, and the new X-Men being printed are just reprints until we get giant-size X-Men.
Yeah, so for years, that's the case. And even when it comes back, I feel like people, sometimes forget this as well. It came back and was, just bi-monthly for a while.
All through Cockrum.
Yeah. It took a while before, and again, it was with Byrne that, it started going monthly again. So, and then Byrne would go on to, write and draw multiple books every month and putting so many other people to shame. But yeah, it's interesting. And I feel like this story, you can kind of see why maybe at the time X-Men was overshadowed, and I'd say rightfully so, by some of these books at the time. Again, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Avengers, but especially because of where X-Men went after this, I feel like this is these kind of stories are more important, have more weight to them as a result of that.
Do you think launching the same exact month as I believe the Avengers ended up ultimately hurting the X-Men? I think they came out within a couple weeks of each other, right?
Same week.
Yeah.
Same week. That's insane. You think about the 2 titles and what they've meant, not only to comic books and movies, but it's hard to imagine that nowadays, Bree.
Now here's an interesting theory, if nothing else. After this story arc, a couple issues later, the Roy Thomas, Neil Adams collaboration on X-Men began, and that ran about 10 issues. The book was canceled during that run. Now, in those days, sales figures weren't as easily accessible or as expedient as they are now, and it was found out later that sales on X-Men had increased to the point to where had they known in time, it wouldn't have been canceled. Now, let's just say for a minute that it's not. Do we ever get the new X-Men? Something to think about. I'd say, for X-Men fans, everything pretty much worked out in their favor. But the Adams Thomas X-Men really did amp up the stakes. I mean, they brought in Havoc and conflict with Bobby, Alex and Lorna, the Living Pharaoh, the Savage Land storyline with Sauron, the first Sauron storyline. Yeah. So those are beautiful books too. If you get a chance to read those, highly recommend them.
Absolutely. If you get a chance, X-Men do not start at Giant Size X-Men #1. Go back and read some of the classic stuff. The team dynamics are a little bit different. The concept I don't think is completely fleshed out as far as what mutants are. Joe obviously got to that earlier, but these are fun stories. This is you just you're not going to find adventures like these really anymore. And that's unfortunate, Joe.
Oh, absolutely. But luckily, Marvel's done a pretty good job at keeping a lot of this in print in some form or fashion. The omnibus collections are back in print next year for both volumes 1 and 2, which cover the entire Silver Age of X-Men. I don't know if all the Epic collections are in print right now, but I believe this is in the Epic collection format at this point. So yeah, definitely. That you can find the X-Men Essentials pretty cheap. Like, yeah, this is a pretty easy story to get a hold of without, denting your wallet trying to get the original issues.
You got any final words, Breen?
No, I think we've pretty much covered it.
Man, hopefully we get the Doc seal of approval on this one. He's going to be excited to see this. We haven't covered X-Men in one of these retrospectives yet, and this is a lot of fun. And obviously we'll be doing DC next week. I want to say thank you very much to Joe and Eric for joining me, and we'll be back again to talk about some more classic comics before you know it.
Sounds good.